everyone for joining us again tonight. Tonight we have Arvind Benegal joining us, fondly known as Benny. Benny's been a long-term meditator with Isha. He volunteers with the Leadership Academy and the Isha Communications. In terms of work, Benny works in the area of cyber information security, digital transformation, program management, and business development. We have him here to talk about a few really interesting, exciting topics and also a little insights about Sadhguru's bike ride and Sadhguru's vision for a conscious planet. Pawan, would you like to get started?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Partha. Thanks to all those of you who have joined in for another exciting conversation that we're going to have today. We have someone, as Partha said, who's been a long-standing volunteer, and also he's a tennis junkie. To also introduce the other side of Benny. Without any delay, let's get to know him better. Benny, if you can unmute yourself, and I have a question for you to start off today's conversation. Let us know something about yourself, where are you from, where you grew up, and what exactly you do.
Namaskaram, and thanks for having me on this Isha Stories, Partha and Pavan. I'm based out of Atlanta, Georgia, and I've had a kind of a roller coaster ride in terms of where I've been. I was born in Calcutta, in India, and then moved to Pune during my high school and undergrad, and then came to the US to do my master's. So I did my master's in computer engineering a long time ago, and then I lived in the US for 21 years, relocated to India in 2009 for 6 years, 3 of which were in Pune, and 3 in Bangalore. I should say that reverse. First 3 years were in Bangalore, and then the next 3 years in Pune. And then relocated back to the US in 2015. So this is my second innings here in the US. It's been 6 years since I've come here, and been closely associated with Isha, both in the US when I was living here, when I went back to India, to Bangalore and Pune, and then now back again in the US. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, which is about 180 miles from the Isha Institute of Inner Sciences, fondly known as III. So we are the closest, I would say, center to III. And it's just a hop, skip, and jump from here to there. So we're really blessed to be in that situation.
Thanks, Benny, for that brief introduction. Also, would you like to share something about what you do in terms of cybersecurity and digital transformation?
Sure. So yeah, my background has been in cyber, and these days it's more information security because of all the craziness around ransomware and hacking that's been going on. So I am the Chief Information Security Officer within my own company. So that's more internally focused. So anything and everything that is security related or cyber related comes to me eventually, whether I like it or not. That's more from our own protection perspective and protection of our client data. And then on the outside, I also do a lot of work around business development and program management for some of our strategic accounts. So that's sort of like a customer-centric role. So I kind of play both the roles.
Quite interesting, to hear exactly about cybersecurity and so on. So I'd just like to know at this point, you've been somebody who's traveled quite a lot, been both in the US, worked in the space here in Bangalore and so on. How did Sadhguru happen? When did you come across Sadhguru? Was it in the US? Was it in India? And what exactly brought you to him?
Pure happenstance and by sheer sort of, I know that nothing is considered to be accidental or coincidental. Everything happens by design, and it's something that I was not looking at or even remotely, because I was living in Atlanta at the time. I was working for IBM and living a comfortable existence here. And all of a sudden, there were 3 different individuals within Isha who were friends of mine, who approached me and said, Sadhguru is coming to Atlanta for a book signing, which is a book that has been written by a meditator. It's called Midnights with a Mystic, and it's happening in a particular location, which was not too far from where I live. And they said, if you're not doing anything, just come on over and be in attendance. So I still remember, this was May of 2008, and I still remember taking a friend of mine, just from a validation perspective, because when you go for spiritual type of sessions, you want to take someone with you to say that, to kind of validate that you're at the right place and you're not being totally influenced by it or overwhelmed by it. So my mind was playing all sorts of games when I went to the event. And there it was. That was my first encounter with Sadhguru in May of 2008. And since then, there's been no looking back, because eventually, within like 3 weeks of that conversation, I had read the book, Midnights with a Mystic. That was my first sort of entry into Isha. And I did the inner engineering program, the 7-day program, in June of 2008 in Atlanta itself. So once that happened, there was no looking back, and I think I just was on a fast track all the way, because in 2009 I moved lock, stock, and barrel to India, which was a huge decision, because after having lived here for 21 years, it was not something easy to make happen, especially with family. I had a 10-year-old daughter at the time, so my wife, my daughter, and I, all 3 of us relocated to Bangalore. And I don't second guess or regret my decision for having moved back, because it was an incredible ride both in Bangalore and in Pune. Bangalore in particular, because it was again within proximity to the Isha Yoga Center in Coimbatore. And I don't know how many trips I've made there and how much time I've spent there, but it was just an absolute blessing to be in India for those 6 years. So that's sort of a long answer to a short question.
So, Benny, just a short rewind. Was Sadhguru your first foray into spirituality? Were you into spirituality before as well? I just wanted to get a little background on that as well.
Oh, that's a good question. I was at a certain point in my adolescence, largely driven by my grandmother, who was very devout and I would say religious. So we would do, daily practices in the form of bhajans, and I had also had my thread ceremony done, so I would do my Sandhya Vandan and all of that. But once I came to the US to do my grad study and then moved to Atlanta to start working, I think that entire thing dissipated, largely because my grandmother's passing. No one else in my family was ultra religious or spiritual in that sense. So really the answer is no. And I think this was just the right thing that happened at the right time, because even though I was, as I'd mentioned earlier, I was living a cushy existence, there was some huge vacuum within me that wasn't sort of expressed or manifested itself in some form, but it just happened at the right time. So yes, I would consider this. I had read lots of books on spirituality, but nothing had kind of penetrated within me until this happened. So I would say that, yeah, this was my first experience, and I'm not planning to move anywhere after this. Yeah.
That's quite interesting. Also, Benny, to hear that you spend quite a lot of time here in Bangalore. I am also I'm from Bangalore, and I know exactly when you say the fortune of being able to just drive to Coimbatore. And also, you might not have regretted going to Atlanta, because it's the closest center, like you say, to Tennessee. But did you? How did you enjoy? I mean, what kind of activity did you do here? Being involved with volunteering, and how is it back there right now?
Well, played so many different roles in volunteering, and as Sadhguru has stated, it just doesn't matter what you do as long as you're completely involved in it and how you do it. So, right from sweeping floors, doing dishes, cleaning bathrooms, all of that, and manning parking lots, to right now managing, relationships with influencers, some of them really large ones. And, I don't sort of discriminate between the two because it's sort of such a fulfilling experience no matter what one does. So while I was in India, it was mostly, um, I think, from a promotional standpoint, from meeting with some of the special programs like Insight was happening, or back then we didn't have the Human is Not a Resource, so Insight had started in 2012, and I distinctly remember I was one of the alums from the very first batch in 2012, and then the following year I went as a volunteer. So a lot of exposure to people that were coming into Isha for the very first time as attendees or guest speakers, or taking care of their requirements and so on and so forth. So for me, it was just a wonderful experience, just being there at the ashram. And then within Bangalore, of course, we had different locations within different parts of the city, and it was the programs itself, the program volunteering within inner engineering programs, and so on and so forth. But the real blessing was that Sadhguru came to Bangalore some 7 or 8 times during those 2.5 to 3 years of my living there, and he hadn't done that in the past. So again, the timing was just incredible for me that we were able to be there in his presence whenever he came to Bangalore. Either it was a private event, or it could be a public satsang, or a inner engineering program in different locations. It was just fabulous. And then the same thing continued in Pune as well. So it's been a mix of different kinds of volunteering. But right now, like it was stated at the outset, mostly focused on Isha communications. We call it communications and not PR, because that's a little bit more generic term. And also with Isha Leadership Academy. And there are a few other things that I've been involved with in volunteering.
I think that's a great place to ask you to speak a little more about the Isha Leadership Academy, Benny. Would you mind letting us know what it is about? What's the foundations of the Isha Leadership Academy?
Yeah, I think Jebi would be the right person. Jebi heads up our Isha Leadership Academy and has the full context. I will tell you from my experience of having been involved now for some amount of time, and I think it suffice it to say that the whole purpose of the Leadership Academy was always about creating conscious leaders, irrespective of which walk of life one was in. Largely, it has been focused around business leadership, and that was the genesis of the Insight program, of which I have been a huge beneficiary myself. It has helped me immensely in my relationships with clients and vendors and my own company people. So first as a participant and then as a volunteer. And as is often said within the Isha community, when you're volunteering, you actually get more out of it than actually doing the program. And that's what I felt when I did the volunteering for Insight a year or two after having been a participant at Insight. So Isha Leadership Academy is largely focused on bringing that level of consciousness through Sadhguru's direction to leadership in India. It allows entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs. So I was an entrepreneur when I attended, making decisions for companies that you work at and not your own company. And it helped immensely in being able to shape your career, your future, but more from a perspective of whatever decisions you're making, how does it impact the things around you? Maybe it's the environment, maybe it's the livelihood of people that you're hiring, maybe it's the location in which you're setting up a business. How is it impacting something much bigger than your profit within the company, or immediate sort of not looking at it from a transactional perspective at all, but much more holistically. And I think that trend has continued. So the Insight program has been so very successful in the last several years that it's continued now to be in its 9th or 10th year of existence. And the level of promotional activities that used to happen back then, we don't need to do that any longer because it's been self-propelled and due to the success of the program itself and people really wanting to come in and be a part of that. In addition to that, they've started the Human is Not a Resource, which happens in June of every year, and it's a 3-day event with largely focused on HR people, but Sadhguru has always said that human is not a resource, it's so much more than that. You can't categorize that as a resource. Unfortunately, HR is a term that has stuck with the industry, but there is a significant move to change that and to look at a human being much more than a resource. So those are the two big events that happen within Isha Leadership Academy. And then there's another initiative that is underway right now, which is a little bit under wraps, so I'm not going to speak too much about it, but it's about creating a whole cadre of conscious leaders within the country and molding young people to become leaders in whichever walk of life they're in.
I think that was very beautifully articulated, Benny, in terms of your experience and also what Sadhguru is doing. Of course, he's spoken so many times and emphasized on the need for conscious leaders and the way it is shaping up with the Leadership Academy. I definitely am looking forward to more things happening over there. Now, before we talk more to Benny about all his activity and all of Sadhguru's activity in the US, I'd just like to reset the room for those of you who are just joining in. Today, we are talking to one of the Isha volunteers from who is currently in USA. And he volunteers with the communications team of Isha and also the Isha Leadership Academy, as he was just mentioning. At the end of this session, please stay tuned. We'll also have a guided meditation at the very end of the session, after we also open up the room for all of you to participate in the conversation. So yes, Partha, if you'd like to take it forward.
Yeah, I'd like to jump into something a little more interesting for all of us. So, Benny, last year Sadhguru made this incredible ride across USA, bike ride. Would love to know a little more about that. Did you get a chance to join in the ride at any point? Could you give us a little details about that?
Yeah, it was an absolute dream experience. Without having actually ridden with him or been in part of his convoy, but we were supporting his initially what started off as being a 2 to 3 week ride, and which graduated to become a 5-week experience. And even though I was not part of the tour itself, I felt like I was following his footsteps every single moment during the journey, partly because we were also engaged in supporting the influencer outreach during his travels. He interacted with so many people and wonderful conversations with Native American leaders, with influencers that got to know about his travels around the United States. And generally speaking, it was a fabulous experience, both from getting to spread the awareness of what he was trying to do with exploring spiritual America. And I think the icing on the cake was his visit to Matotipila, which Sadhguru has in fact visited a second time, and he did a full moon flirtation satsang from there, not the last one but the one before that, from Wyoming. He made a special trip there in his own camper, and because it was such a powerful space, in fact he has stated that it's the most powerful space energy-wise that he has encountered within the continental United States. So as part of that journey, I think we were able to reach out to, and now I'm speaking more from as volunteering for the communications team. We were able to reach out to a very large segment of audience who simply did not know who Sadhguru was or is. and we were able to bring them into the fold. And you might have realized that as a result of this and other awareness initiatives that Sadhguru has taken up in the United States, leading up to Conscious Planet, the amount of overwhelming response is just tremendous. Much of that is happening on social media, and a lot more would have happened if he was actually meeting people in person. But it's a blessing in disguise, actually, that he's been able to reach out, I think, to more people as a result of him being online. More activities can be scheduled because he doesn't need to travel all that much. And he can do it back to back with the kind of energy that he has. He can do any number of conversations as long as they are meaningful and impactful, and reach a large segment of the population. So yeah, tracing the route and making it almost a part of my own journey was the experience that I had during his motorcycle jaunt. And then, of course, I was there at the III on his homecoming. So I would say that last part I was very much an integral part of, and it was just magical when he and the convoy came into the gates of the Isha Institute here, and we had lined up the streets leading up to the abode, with people on both sides flanking with flower petals to basically greet him back after the 5 weeks and 10,000 miles or so of travel. And that was just simply wonderful. And he did a satsang after that for everybody at the abode. So also got to take some pictures with the fellow riders on their super motorbikes. And there was one couple that was from Bangalore whom I know, who were also part of the team. So it was really nice to reconnect with them after so many years.
It's quite fantastic, especially to hear about Sadhguru's homecoming day and how that happened. I still remember the visuals that we saw here from India. Talking about the overwhelming response of influencers, we all saw it. We all saw Will Smith invite Sadhguru and have a chat, and how he was intrigued by Sadhguru's work. And we also saw people like Tony Robbins and you name it, and everybody spoke to Sadhguru last year around this time in the US. Where does it fall into the picture of creating a conscious planet, and how do you see it falling into place in terms of creating a conscious planet?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. See, the conscious planet, Sadhguru's vision is both tops down and bottoms up. He has very clearly stated that unless the governments of countries get involved in making ecology as a prime election issue, I mean, the people will make it an election issue, but the governments will, sanction the budgets and create the policies and implement the policies. This whole aspect of ecological damage that human beings themselves have done on the planet, there is no easy solution to that. So if you and I do our little bit of making sure that we're not running the tap or throwing plastic out, these are little things that we can do, but they're not part of the big solution. It's not going to create a huge impact. But when the same thing is done at the level of the governments, then if the policies are shaped in such a way and implemented in such a way that action is taken, and the action has to be taken within the term of the government that is in power, then it makes sense that we can turn around this ecological damage that we have done to this planet. So Conscious Planet is an effort to bring about that change, and the change can only be affected by people that live in democratic countries, who can shape an election issue, to bring in the leadership who will follow that and make sure that it is adhered to within the term that they serve. So in doing that, I think the tops down part is getting to influencers in a way that they will shape, because of their large ambit of influence, large numbers of people, millions of followers, that can basically be a partner to this program of Conscious Planet. Once that happens, then if we can get, and this is Sadhguru's vision, that he wants to get 3 billion people on the planet to essentially become conscious of the fact that ecology should become an issue within the election manifesto. So 60% of the total number of people that are living in democratic countries, if we can touch that level of number of people, then we can make a big difference in the next 10 to 15 years. Because if we don't do that, we are really talking about survival of the human species. The planet will survive, but the human species may not survive. So this is all about making sure that we turn it around in such a way that these election issues of ecology become center and front for the leaders to take action upon. So in doing this, we have interfaced with a large number of influencers, and the influencers don't necessarily need to be individuals. They could be United Nations, they could be the World Economic Forum, they could be institutions like that. And in our case, the United Nations, it's called the UNCCD. It's the Convention to Combat Desertification. They've already signed on and are on board with this initiative of Conscious Planet. So the question is, how do you transform 3 billion people who have the power to vote and exercise their franchise to shape ecology as being, one of the issues that the leaders would need to deal with? So that's the effort towards Conscious Planet, is to make that transformation happen and make human beings more conscious about their role in making this happen. So that's the bottoms up part of it. So we're approaching it from both sides, and I think that's the absolutely right strategy that Sadhguru has in making this happen.
So we've spoken a little about the influencers' engagement and their response to Sadhguru Beni, but how's it been with regular Americans with his activity in the past year and a half? How have you seen them responding to Sadhguru's different calls for whether it's the Conscious Planet or to go within?
Yeah, it has been overwhelming. The dramatic shift. A lot of that has happened as a result of his presence here in the U.S. has made a big difference. The kind of engagements that he has had with influencers. The motorcycle tour definitely added a large part of it. And then the Karma book launch. So he came here on the 15th of April, and he was here until literally a few days ago. So he spent a good 3 months in the U.S. It was absolute amazing, to see that. One is, of course, the awareness that he has created, and the other is the response that we are seeing, a large part of it on social media. And I was just alluding to this earlier that, for instance, there are people that have never met him or never gone to a program from the whole continent of South America, which is, posting, his quotes, his, responses to YouTube videos, and so on and so forth. It's just been so wonderful to see that happen, that level of engagement and a two-way street that has been created as a result of his awareness initiatives. And of course, when I talk about his awareness initiatives, we are talking about the immensity of the rich content that is already there for everybody to consume on YouTube and other channels, which allows them to be able to, respond in situations like this. So the Karma book has been a huge factor. The motorcycle tour has been a huge factor, and across all walks of life, because there are people that we are talking to right now who are in the music business, whether they're venture capitalists, whether they're in the movie business, or artists, or whatever area that they are experts in. and we don't want to undermine anybody in this equation. So we've sort of categorized them into high level or mega influencers. Then we have the macro level influencers with hundreds of thousands of followers on social media, and then we have the mini influencers, or we call them micro influencers, who have a certain ambit of influence within they could be doctors or architects or lawyers, or and so on and so forth. So we make sure that we keep tabs on them. We track them in terms of wanting to continue to engage with them. And it's been really truly wonderful. And this is just still I think we're scratching the surface. We have a long way to go.
Yeah, and in the few weeks that Pawan and I have been speaking with a few volunteers, volunteering in different areas, it was just unbelievable to see how many people got in touch with Sadhguru by watching his video on YouTube or Instagram. It was just mind-boggling.
Also, it really
and especially Instagram, we've seen a huge increase in the Instagram postings from so many different influencers, and people who may not be influencers, who are posting or tweeting or liking or sharing, and that's exactly the reason why Sadhguru is on social media, is to counterbalance all the negativity that there is on social media, and it's working really beautifully.
Yeah. Also, interesting point which we were discussing, I think yesterday or sometime before that. You mentioned how a lot of the followers coming up and engaging with Sadhguru are surprisingly from South America, where he has not been to yet.
That's correct. And I think part of that is because of the YouTube channel, YouTube Espanol, which translates whatever he's saying into Spanish. And we've got so many requests from people in South America that would want to meet him or have him come there. And it'll happen. We just want to make sure that the timing is right, and we want to also be aware of the fact that we're dealing with this pandemic. It's interesting that we haven't used the term pandemic in this entire conversation so far, but that's a very large factor in which why Sadhguru has not met people in person as much as he would like to. But at the same time, I think, like I said earlier, it's a blessing in disguise, because he can do so much more online with engaging with people, and still being able to provide the same level of impact, if not more.
Certainly, Sadhguru has made it very easy for us to not use the word pandemic and still keep going with what we have to do. And he's just on all the time. It just amazes me time and again. I'd also like to announce at this moment that if anybody from the audience wants to come up and speak or share or ask a question to Benny, you can start raising your hand right now, and we'll let you come up and speak in a few minutes. And also to announce to the room, at the end of this conversation, after the Q&A also happens, in case we have any questions, we will have a small guided meditation, so please stay tuned for that.
Yep. Another question I had for you, Benny, would you like to tell us a little about Sadhguru's plan for consecrated spaces at the ashram? It seems like there's some plans coming up towards the end of the year. Is that something you can throw a little light about and talk a little about?
Yeah, he himself has spoken about it at the satsang. So, I mean, the idea is to get the entire space consecrated. It is already consecrated. There are, you can feel it when you walk into the environment, and it's a blessing for those who are living there and are residents of III. But one thing that he has talked about is the consecration of the Devi, and hopefully it will happen at the end of this year if all things go well. But this is a huge, exciting thing for me personally. I had attended the Linga Bhairavi consecration in IYC back in 2010. I think it was January of 2010, if I'm not mistaken, or February of 2010. And I had missed the Adiyogi consecration here at the abode in 2015, even though I was living in Atlanta, but I had something to attend to, so I missed that. So I'm really looking forward to whenever this happens, whether it happens at the end of this year or next year. I'm totally going to be there. But in terms of consecrated spaces, the Mahima has been consecrated by Sadhguru back in November of 2008. In fact, I happened to be the very first batch of BSP when just the day after the consecration of Mahima, we were some 250 odd participants, and it was just incredible to be a part of that environment, which just been consecrated, and also the abode, of course, and even if you're walking out into the open, the whole environment is just so beautiful that the energies just accentuate that. So yeah, so that's the current consecration plan for this year. Yeah.
So we have Manjari and Omkar who come up to ask a question. Manjari, would you like to unmute yourself and ask Benny a question, or if you have any?
Yeah, thank you, Partana. Am I audible?
Yes, you are, Manjari.
Wonderful to hear you share, Benny Anna. It's been a long time. Benny Anna, I've met Anna in Pune when I was volunteering, and it's been a few years now. We've not met. Really wonderful to hear you share your experiences. I'd like to ask you if you can share with us some intimate moments or any funny instances that you had with Sadhguru or like to share with us.
Thanks for that, Manjari. And I think that, yeah, we have not sort of interacted, even though I was at the ashram, I think 2019 December, just before the pandemic. I went there twice, as a matter of fact, but we didn't get to meet, unfortunately. But yes, do remember the wonderful volunteering experiences in Pune with you. And in terms of, there are so many moments like that I can, we'll need a whole hour or so that we could discuss and talk about. But the most recent one was, I would say, we had a inner engineering completion retreat, which just happened about 2 weekends ago. And we had a number of influencers that came and participated in an absolutely wonderful program for inner engineering completion. And Sadhguru took the time to come out and spend an hour and a half with all the participants and the volunteers on the penultimate day, the day before the initiation. And that was really wonderful because he also took questions from the influencers. And then following the culmination of the program, after the initiation was complete, he met with a few of the influencers one-on-one. And during that time, I had the opportunity to introduce him to one of the influencers. And, generally speaking, we would just introduce the person and then we would walk away. But in this particular case, he said, please sit. So I had the opportunity to sit with the influencer, and Sadhguru spent a good 10 minutes with us. There were some action items from that conversation. And so that was the most recent incredible experience of being with him one-on-one. Prior to that, my experience of, just any of the events that Sadhguru does, whether it's at Harvard or Columbia, I've had the opportunity to travel and be in his presence during those sessions, whether it's Youth and Truth or Mystic Eye in New York or wherever else. So it has just been been a blessing. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Manjari. Thank you, Benny. Omkar, would you like to unmute yourself and ask a question?
Yes, thanks, Partha. Partha, am I audible?
Yes, Omkar, I can hear you.
Namaskaram, Benny Anna, and thank you for this opportunity. So I heard a few months ago that maybe a few weeks ago that Sadhguru had Lap of the Master in the US this year. So was very excited to know about how it went and what did he share or think anything that you can share with us about that if possible. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Hi, Namaskaram, Omkar. I'm not sure how much I can share because I don't know if it has been recorded or shown as yet. So I'll leave that suspense on as much as I can. But I can talk in a little bit more generality that it was a fabulous session. It was one day. Normally, Lap of the Master happens 2-day or 3-day event. But I think in the context of the pandemic and all the testing that needs to happen, and the number of people that came, we had over 2,000 RSVPs and 2,000 people coming to the Mahima Garden on a beautiful day. It was a summer afternoon. Sadhguru started the program at 4 p.m. Local time, and it was absolutely riveting for the first 3 hours. It was from 4 to 7 p.m. Then we had a 2-hour break for dinner, and he resumed the program at 9 p.m. and went on till midnight. So 3 hours plus 3 hours, we got 6 hours of undiluted time with Sadhguru during that. He talked a lot about Sanskriti. And I'm only going to cover the topics that he talked about without going into the details. He talked a lot about Sanskriti. He talked a lot about conscious planet. He also talked about solar flares, which are essentially impacting the energy system on planet Earth right now, and how we can make use of that energy to transform ourselves even faster than what we would do without that additional energy impetus coming from the sun. These are the three sort of big items that he spent quite a bit of time talking about. And then, of course, there was a meditation process that happened at the end. But again, I will not go into the details of that. But this was sort of like the gist of it. And the involvement from the participants was incredible. I mean, there were even smaller children out there. It was open to everybody, not just meditators. So we had a really huge gathering and extremely well disciplined, very self-policed, and I was volunteering part-time and of course sitting down and listening to him for the most part. So it was just a great experience, and we really felt like we were in the lap of creation itself.
Thank you, Benegal. Thank you.
Thanks.
So one other thing that I would want to mention is in the context of Conscious Planet, I don't know how many people are aware that we have started a Sadhguru Center for Conscious Planet, which is essentially, it's been started by Dr. Bala Subramaniam. He is he's the director of this new initiative. He is part of the anesthesia department at Harvard Medical School and at the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, which is called BID-MC, and affiliated with Harvard. So this is essentially it's a multidisciplinary research center which is focused on understanding the relationship between human consciousness, cognition, and compassion. It is based in the Department of Anesthesia and Critical Care and Pain Medicine, and it works closely with the Harvard Medical School system. So it basically, the agenda is to conduct rigorous research, facilitate thoughtful conversations and exploration, and building awareness through education and community outreach. So it's a wonderful thing that Sadhguru's name has been assigned to this center. So Bala spoke to this a little bit at the Lap of the Master as well.
Yep, thanks for sharing about that, Benny. We did have a couple of researchers from Sadhguru Center for a Conscious Planet come speak with us, and it was a very fascinating conversation. And they themselves want to come back. And, they have a lot more to share in terms of research goals and plans. So we're looking forward to that. Thanks for bringing it up.
Mhm.
Arjit, would you like to go next? Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. Namaskaram, everyone. So, my question is this: I just noticed, this time, especially this fall, this time, Sadhguru traveled to US, resulted even last year included, resulted in lots of conversation with influencers, and as per what we found in through social media. So I was, and of course that we saw the response, and then of course the Karma book got a huge response internationally. Now it is even international bestseller, including this day in the New York Times bestseller list. So I was quite fascinated. There was suddenly there was this even considering it was a pandemic time, but suddenly I saw a huge spot of interest from celebrities and other influencers. So I was wondering, what is the future strategy and goal to take these movement of Sadhguru towards influencers outside India, so like celebrities outside India, so non-Indians or celebrities outside India. So what is the future strategy, like if you could share something on that? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Arijit. I think the biggest goal right now is Conscious Planet. Sadhguru is focused on that, especially in the United States, because, like I said earlier, that we have to be able to influence large numbers of people to bring them into the fold, to bring ecology as a election issue. So how do you do that? You can do that through grassroots effort, or you can do that from top down. Influencers make it so much easier that, once they are subscribed to something and they view it as a part of their own mission in what they do, it becomes a natural progression. So the partnership between these influencers, I'm not saying all of them, but some of them, will be a key and instrumental part of making the Conscious Planet a reality. We've already seen this happen in a huge way with Rally for Rivers and with the Kaveri Calling, where, as a result of the outreach, there's been, it's not just approval or government-related, sanctions, but the actual implementation is happening. So we want to make sure that that happens for Conscious Planet, and a foundation has been set up for that purpose. So these influencers will be very instrumental in supporting that effort. So that's one big aspect of it. The other aspect, of course, is that Sadhguru would want to have one drop of spirituality across the entire planet. If he had his wishes fulfilled, he would consecrate the whole planet and every human being within it. So this allows a huge reach of mainstream people that are across the board, whichever continent one happens to be in, so that the tools and technology that Sadhguru has designed and created for all of us reaches every one of them. So that is another aspect of engaging with influencers. And the third and most, I would say, we cannot undermine that, and that is that to counterbalance all the negativity that there is on social media, having this kind of ability for human beings to enhance their well-being through these tools and technologies is a very big part of the charter.
Just a follow-up question on this, if you don't mind answering. I wanted to know, is these influencers list are going to include politicians from US, and are you also suggesting combining or fusing the conscious planet with wonderful spirituality in the future? Like Sadhguru is planning that in that context, and also like is the in the coming future, like in the near future, is Sadhguru is also planning to interact with the US politicians, like something is like that in the pipeline. So if you would get just share something on that.
No, I don't think the politics has anything to do with this. It's more about what is the. Um, so let's say that I was wanting to evaluate a particular influencer. I would look at their, the impact that they can create, the work that they have done, and the reach that they have. So it's a combination of things. It's not just one or the other. Um, when there's no motivation to interact directly with a politician because it can get into areas that we don't want to, and that is true everywhere, not just in the United States. It happens in India. The other thing is that Sadhguru is an Indian citizen, and he doesn't generally comment on U.S. politics as much as possible. So that part is off the table. But having said that, there might be a person who's an influencer, who may be a politician, but who has done tremendous amount of work in a particular area, which is in congruence with what Sadhguru's vision is. So maybe it is about soil, maybe it is about the environment, maybe it's about trees, and so on and so forth. Then, of course, there will be some level of engagement there. So I'm not discounting it. I'm just saying that it is not about politics at all. It is about what can they bring to the table in terms of impact based on the work that they have done and the work that they're planning to do. So that is the strategy.
Thank you, Benny. Salajaka, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Correct. Speaking, you'll have to unmute yourself first. We can't hear you.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yes.
Namaskaram Partha, Namaskaram Benny. Thank you so much. I do know, I heard this since the time I've joined the conversation. I heard the word consecration very often, and I'm also looking at the topic which says the conscious planet, Sadhguru's vision. I'm just a little curious to know. Well, in this part of the country, we are all very, very familiar with certain words. So I'm just a little curious to know how is this term consecration perceived over there, and especially when we are talking about conscious planet, and then I'm curious to know how are you going to connect these two there, and how do you weave the whole thing together? That was one thing. And another thing was about when we're talking about the conscious planet, are we talking, are we specifically focusing on kids and how do we make them aware, or any work in that direction? Like, especially that you mentioned about Sadhguru speaking about Samskriti kids, because I remember once he mentioned that he's preparing these kids for the universe and not for the university. I'm just looking.
Right.
Okay, so let me address the first one. Consecration and conscious planet are being looked upon as two different things. So we're not trying to use consecration as a part of the conscious planet, initiative. Consecration, I think the question was asked around what kind of plans we have for consecration within III, if I'm not mistaken. So that was more from that perspective. So we're not trying to bring consecration into the mainstream, thinking right now, because it will be difficult, like you said, to get everybody involved in that. Conscious planet is something that everybody can rally around, and that is more around ecology that I talked about earlier, to basically transform human beings to become more aware of how important a role ecology is playing, because 95% of humanity is still unaware of it, and unfortunately, and even those people who are aware of it, because of the complexity of the rules and regulations, it's all, as Sadhguru calls it, it's all PhD stuff. So if we can get just the general average people to essentially say that these are the 5 things that governments should be doing to support ecology on the planet or in their own country, and not just the planet, in their own country, and they can shape that as an election issue, then it becomes a big deal. And also state these are the 2 or 3 things that we should never be doing. So if that happens at the level of the average person, then if the government comes into, whichever government it is that comes into power, has a certain amount of time that they can contribute towards making it happen and sanction the budgets, implement the policies, and do that. So that is where Conscious Planet comes in. So that's the first part of your question. The second part, which is about how is Conscious Planet associated with kids. I think that Sadhguru spoke about it in 2 different contexts. So when he spoke about Samskriti, it was really, like you said, building children to become a part of the universe and not of the university. And we've had I don't know if you were able to attend, there was a wonderful clubhouse sharing by some of the alums of Samskriti who have spent 12 years at Isha Yoga Center and have now graduated, if that's the right term. And they are now in the outside world, and they've been doing phenomenal things outside. So that was the context in which Sadhguru was talking about that. You don't have to have a quote-unquote degree or a certificate, because none of that is going to be awarded to you. It is about making you a cosmic citizen. It's not about you being, schooled in any particular thing, but you need to know how you can adapt to any circumstance and provide a well-being for yourself and for everybody around you. And that's exactly what these kids are doing. So I think that in the end goal of Conscious Planet will certainly include that level of awareness that these kids would have. But I think there are a number of people that are going to be coming out of Samskriti is a small number. They will make a huge impact, there's no question about it. But I'm not sure how it exactly would align with Conscious Planet in terms of the scale that we are talking about, how big the initiative is, because it needs to be touched with every part of the globe and every democratic country that there is. So I think there would be in that sense, it would be 2 orthogonal things. Yeah.
Can I add into this?
Yes, Kunal, please go ahead.
Yeah, so concentration of the whole planet, maybe I feel that it would happen in a way like this. So once there was a project in Washington DC with TM Siddhas. So these people were given a mantra by a TM master, transcendental master, and just using that one word or something, these people had transcended the regular emotions and stuff. So these people had gathered in Washington between the 7th of June to the 30th of July 1993. And these people had predicted that they would reduce the crime rate over 20% in the city during that period. And in that time, they said that they will not have any verbal, social, political, or any physical interaction. But the meditators would just sit and quietly, discreetly from the field of consciousness, they would reduce the crime rate in BC.
Kunal, so is this a question that you have?
No, actually, this is the answer.
Okay. Thank you, Kunal. We'll move to the next person, and if you have no question, we'll move to the next person. Thank you.
Satish, please unmute yourself. Go ahead. Satish, you're not totally audible. It's not too clear. Your voice is not too clear.
You can hear me now? No?
Yeah, much better.
Okay. Namaskaram. Thanks for this opportunity. So, I understand the vision of the conscious planet and how how it should become an ecological like political issue, and then how it gets into impact, and then these things. But I would like to know, like, me as an individual, or we as an individuals, how can we support to this conscious planet? I'm sure you might have addressed this, or it was already, but I have attended it a bit late. Um, so I would like to know a few things on that. What would you say now?
Sure.
Namaskaram.
Sure. So Sadhguru has stated this in no uncertain terms, that anybody that drinks water or eats food or walks upon this planet is a part of conscious planet. So every one of us has a role to play, and the kind of role that we would play is, first of all, transforming ourselves to become those agents, to guide and be able to influence people around us to make this an issue at the elections. So we all, most of us on this call, I would say, if not all 100%, live in democratic countries, and we have all the right to exercise our franchise and vote in elections. So it is up to us, really, to make it happen. So at one level, we're talking about influencers, but at the level of the common man, we certainly have the power in our hands to shape this. So one is, of course, vote ourselves into this to make sure that this becomes an election issue, and that is a part of the solution. The other thing that Sadhguru has talked about is that, use our intelligence to make it a part of our solution and not a problem, because unfortunately intelligence itself has been hijacked and has become a huge problem. Otherwise we wouldn't have been doing the kind of damage that we are to the planet. So this allows us to transform that intelligence into a part of that solution, and whatever we can to do to make this happen from the perspective of making it an election issue. And it doesn't have to be the number one issue, because economy will always be the number one issue. So we should at least make this the number two issue on election manifesto. So whatever it takes for an individual. I know that we can't move the earth to make this happen. We have to do it individually, and if we are all individually transformed, then of course it becomes a lot easier. So that's where I think the individual will come into play. So it is for everybody. It's not just for influencers to partner with the conscious planet. It's for every one of us to become a partner in this.
Thank you very much, Manu.
Thank you, Satish. Naveen, you can go ahead now. Please unmute yourself.
Namaskaram, it's already 9. I have a question. Last year,
Satish, your voice is really feeble. Can you speak up a little, please?
Namaskaram. Is it? Hello.
Yeah, it's much better now. Go ahead.
Last year there was supposed to be a mega launch of Conscious Planet. Due to pandemic, it got cancelled. I heard in one of the Sadhguru videos. Is there any plans to launch in a big way about this? I just wanted to know this.
Yes, because of the pandemic, things have been delayed. So it will happen, and I'm not sure about the specific dates for the launch, but it will happen in a big way whenever it happens, and for Sadhguru to make that decision. But the pandemic was the reason why it has been kind of on a slower track than it would have been otherwise. Yeah.
Thanks, Naveen. Thanks for your question. That brings us to the end of the questions. Partana, if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, before we end the discussion and Q&A, just wanted to ask one final question to Benny. So, Benny, how can all of us help with this vision for a conscious planet? Does one have to be an Isha meditator to chip in? Can you give us like a quick idea on how all of us can contribute to this?
Yeah, I just said that a little while ago that if you drink water, if you eat food, if you're walking on the surface of the earth, then you are a part of conscious planet. So you don't need to be a meditator. It's almost like when Sadhguru wrote the book on death, he said, this book is for everybody that shall die. That's the same thing with Conscious Planet. Anybody that drinks water or eats food or walks on the planet is a part of Conscious Planet. So yes, everybody is party to this. And we will roll out, the Conscious Planet Foundation will roll out the exact initiatives. I don't want to jump the gun there in terms of what exactly one can do. But at this point, suffice it to say that use the tools of well-being and technology that you have in making sure that you are aware of the ecological situation. Once that awareness is there, whatever you can do to make that a better situation, whether it is about voting in your local elections, whether it is about national elections, just making sure that ecology is front and center.
Great. Thank you, Benny.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, that brings to us to the end of this particular section of questions, and also we've in this conversation over the last more than an hour, I would say, have touched upon so many aspects of what Sadhguru has to do in terms of creating a conscious planet. We spoke about creating leadership. We spoke about how we all need to be part of being aware of the ecological consequences that are happening. We spoke about how the Samskriti kids who are studying with Isha and trained in a certain way, how they play a role in this, and how influencers and Sadhguru's reach over social media itself is creating such a big wave in creating a conscious planet. Benny, thank you so much for spending time with us for a little more than an hour. We're really grateful to you for sharing all your experiences, sharing all your insights with us, and especially spending this time with us.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for giving me the platform to speak about it. Thank you.